Have you ever felt trapped by something that seemed good for you but, deep down, only pulled you further away from true peace? So often, we seek fulfillment in temporary things, yet nothing ever truly satisfies us. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a bird that discovered true freedom isn't found in the world, but... Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming reflections that will surely uplift your life. The forest awakened with the gentle touch of the morning breeze. The tree branches stretched toward the sun, and the streams sparkled under the golden light. High among the branches, a small bird with bluish feathers sang its song, filling the air with a joyful melody. Flying was its greatest passion, and each new day brought the promise of freedom and adventure. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. Despite its seemingly perfect life, there was a persistent sense of restlessness. A strange feeling that something was missing, as if, no matter how far it flew across the forest, it never found the place where it truly belonged. It watched the other animals, the rabbit happily running through the fields, the squirrel family playfully chasing each other among the trees, and wondered why, even surrounded by beauty and companionship, it still felt empty. It tried to ignore that feeling, keeping busy with new explorations, flying higher and farther than ever before. But no matter where it went, the feeling followed. It was as if something inside was longing for an answer it had yet to find. And so, one ordinary afternoon, as it flew aimlessly, it spotted something it had never noticed before, a hidden lake nestled among the trees. The water shimmered in a way that felt different, as if calling out to it. Fascinated, the bird descended and landed at the water's edge, unaware that this encounter would change its life forever. The bird landed on the edge of the lake, intrigued. It had never seen anything like it. The water was so clear that it mirrored the sky like a perfect reflection, but there was something more, something mesmerizing. Tiny golden sparks danced across the surface, as if the sun itself had melted into it. Cautiously, it stepped closer. The forest was silent, as if everything around was holding its breath, waiting for its next move. Feeling its throat dry from the long journey, it leaned in and took a sip of the shimmering water. The moment the drop touched its tongue, something strange happened. A gentle warmth spread through its body, and a feeling of weightlessness filled its wings. It felt rejuvenated, as if it could fly higher and faster than ever before. The exhaustion disappeared, and a newfound excitement surged within. With a sudden impulse, it took off, soaring through the forest with a speed it had never known. The colors around it seemed more vibrant, the sounds more intense, and an uncontrollable euphoria overtook it. For the first time, that emptiness that had always followed it seemed to be gone. As night fell, the bird returned to its usual perch, but something was different. Despite the joy it had felt, a subtle discomfort began to grow inside. The memory of the water's glow lingered in its mind, calling it back. Without realizing it, it was already counting down the hours until dawn, eager to return to the lake and drink once more. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when the bird opened its eyes. Its first thought of the day wasn't the song of the other birds or the crisp morning breeze, it was the lake. The image of that shimmering water and the effect it had on him the night before consumed his mind entirely. Without hesitation, he took off, slicing through the sky toward the place where he had found this newfound pleasure. The closer he got, the stronger his anticipation grew. The moment he landed on the shore, he leaned in without delay and drank eagerly from the enchanted water. And there it was again, that surge of energy, that sense of freedom, that instant joy. His body felt stronger, his wings lighter. He soared like never before, cutting through the wind currents, feeling invincible. The emptiness was gone, at least for the moment. But just like the night before, the feeling didn't last forever. As the effect faded, a heavy weight settled in his chest. The world returned to what it had been before, ordinary, dull, lifeless. Nothing seemed interesting anymore after experiencing that euphoria. And so, the cycle began. Day after day, he returned to the lake. At first, just a sip was enough to make him feel alive again. But over time, the effect seemed to wear off more quickly. He started drinking more and more, chasing that initial high, yet never fully reaching it again. The forest, once his vibrant and welcoming home, now seemed gray and empty. He no longer sang in the mornings, because his mind was always fixated on his next trip to the lake. His flights were no longer about exploring new places, only about going back and forth to that one spot. His friends noticed his absence. The rabbit, who once enjoyed his songs, asked why he no longer filled the forest with music. The squirrel, who used to play with him among the branches, saw that his feathers had lost their shine. But he pulled away. He didn't want to answer questions. He didn't want anyone to stop him from returning to the lake. Even when he tried to stay away, it was as if something inside him kept pulling him back. He felt like he had no choice. He needed the enchanted water. Or at least, that's what he believed. Time passed, and the bird was no longer the same. Its once vibrant flight had become heavy. Its feathers had lost their shine, and its song had faded into silence. The lake, which at first had seemed like a source of pleasure and energy, had turned into a suffocating necessity. It no longer drank by choice, it drank because it felt like it couldn't live without that water. On a quiet night, as it struggled to sleep on a crooked branch, it sensed a presence beside it. Slowly, it opened its eyes and saw an owl perched nearby, its deep gaze steady and knowing. "You're tired, aren't you?" the owl asked in a calm tone. The bird looked away. "I just need to rest. Tomorrow, I'll go back to the lake, and I'll feel better." The owl watched him for a moment before replying. "And how many times have you told yourself that? How many times have you thought that next time would be different?" The bird had no answer. "If that water truly brought you happiness, why do you always feel the need to return?" A tightness grew in the bird's chest. Deep down, it knew the owl was right. At first, the water had seemed to fix everything, but now it felt like an invisible prison. There was no real joy anymore, only the constant anxiety of needing more and more. "But I don't have a choice," it whispered, barely finding its voice. The owl stepped a little closer. "Yes, you do. The freedom you've been searching for has always been inside you. You just have to decide to stop holding on to something that's only hurting you." The bird shook its head. "But how? How can I break free when every part of me wants to go back?" The owl's voice was gentle yet firm. "The same strength that took you to that lake can take you away from it. You're stronger than you think. You just have to believe that you can choose something better." The bird sat in silence as the owl's words echoed inside him. It looked at its own wings, remembering a time when it had flown freely, needing nothing but the open sky and the wind to be happy. The owl studied him for a moment, then, with one last wise glance, spread its wings and disappeared into the darkness of the night. The bird remained there, thinking. What if it was true? What if the freedom it had been searching for had never been in the lake, but inside itself all along? That night, for the first time in a long time, it slept without dreaming of the shimmering water. It dreamed only of the sky. The next morning, the bird woke up with a strange feeling in its chest. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel the immediate urge to fly to the lake. But as the day went on, the restlessness returned. Its mind tried to convince it that it needed the magical water, that without it, the emptiness and weakness would never go away. It tried to resist, tried to focus on other things. But the craving grew stronger and stronger until it became unbearable. As if on autopilot, it spread its wings and took off. The lake shimmered as always, calling him back. When he landed at the shore, he looked at his own reflection in the water. He barely recognized himself. His eyes looked tired, his feathers dull and lifeless. But he ignored it. He leaned in and drank. For a brief moment, that familiar wave of relief washed over him, but something was different. The pleasure didn't last. It faded faster than ever before. And soon, the discomfort returned, stronger this time. He drank more, desperate to feel something, but nothing changed. The glow of the water seemed empty, artificial. What once felt like a source of happiness now revealed itself as nothing more than an endless cycle. And then, something inside him broke. A deep weakness overtook his body. His wings felt heavy. He tried to take off, but he couldn't. For the first time, he realized he was trapped, not by chains, not by a cage, but by something within himself. And there, on the shore of the lake he had chased for so long, he felt an overwhelming fear. What had he become? Where was the bird that once flew freely, needing nothing but the open sky? With the last bit of strength he had, he stepped away from the water. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what he would do next. He only knew one thing: he didn't want this anymore. The forest seemed far away. The path back felt long. But in that moment, a new certainty grew within him: he had to try. Because if he truly wanted to be free, there was only one choice to make. And that choice was his. The bird staggered away from the lake, its wings trembling with weakness. Every step was a struggle, as if an invisible force was trying to pull it back. For a moment, it paused and looked over its shoulder. The golden shimmer of the water still called to him, whispering promises of relief. But now he knew the truth. That water would never set him free. With immense effort, he kept moving forward, distancing himself from the place that had once seemed essential. The path ahead was unfamiliar, and doubt weighed on his heart. Then, he heard a familiar sound. "You're back." The bird lifted its eyes and saw a squirrel running toward him, its small gaze filled with both worry and relief. "Where have you been? We've all missed you." The bird tried to answer, but his voice failed him. He felt exhausted, drained. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the ground. The squirrel quickly rushed to his side. "You're so weak. Come on, let me help you." Gently, the squirrel helped him stand together. They walked, slowly, steadily, away from the lake. As they moved through the forest, the bird started noticing things he hadn't seen in a long time. The sky was a brilliant shade of blue. The wind weaving through the leaves created a soft melody. The songs of other birds filled the air. All of it had always been there, but he had stopped seeing it. "You spent too much time at that lake," the squirrel said as they walked. "I tried calling you back a few times, but you always seemed so distant." The bird let out a tired sigh. "I thought I needed it to feel okay. But in the end, it only made me feel worse." The squirrel nodded. "Sometimes, we believe certain things will make us happy, but they only trap us instead. true freedom never comes from what's on the outside, it's always been inside you. The words echoed in the bird's heart. He thought of the owl, of his heavy wings, of his struggle to break free from the cycle that had kept him trapped. Freedom had never been in the lake. Never in the fleeting sensation he had chased for so long. It had always been there, in his choice, in his will to let go. The bird closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. It was hard. It was painful. But for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. And that was all he needed to keep going. The days that followed were not easy. The bird felt the weight of everything it had been through, and on some mornings, the memory of the lake still tried to call him back. But now, he knew the truth, that wasn't happiness, it was only a fleeting illusion. And even though the desire to return still lingered, he made the choice, every single day, to keep moving forward. At first, his flights were short and uncertain. His body was still weak, and the forest, once so familiar, now felt like an entirely new place. But little by little, he began to rediscover the beauty of what had always been around him. The wind rustling through the branches. The gentle warmth of the sun on his feathers. The laughter of the other animals, who welcomed him back as if he had never been gone. And most importantly, he began to sing again. At first, his voice was shaky, as if afraid to break the silence. But over time, his song grew stronger, filling the forest once more. And that was when he realized something he had never truly understood before. The emptiness he had felt didn't need to be filled by something external. He needed to learn how to fill it from within. The freedom he had been searching for was never in the lake. It had always been inside him, waiting to be chosen. And now, he chose it, every single day. Each morning, as he opened his eyes, he reminded himself that he no longer needed the false promises of that water. He was strong enough to decide his own path. And that was true freedom. Time passed, and the bird was no longer the same. Its once uncertain flight had become steady and light. Its song, silenced for so long, once again filled the forest. But more than anything, something inside him had changed. He was free. Not because he never felt the urge to return to the lake, some memories still surfaced from time to time, but because now he knew he had a choice. He was no longer a prisoner of desire, no longer a slave to an endless need. He had come to understand that true freedom didn't come from the outside, it came from within. And with that freedom came a new purpose. As he looked around, he realized he wasn't the only one who had ever felt trapped. Many searched for happiness in fleeting things, trying to fill a void that never truly disappeared. Some hid behind the illusion that they were fine, while others had lost hope of ever changing. The bird knew what that felt like. He knew the weight of that invisible prison. So he decided that his new mission would be to help others see what had taken him so long to understand. With his renewed voice, he began to share his story. He spoke of the lake, of how he had lost himself, but most importantly, of how he had found the strength within to start over. Some listened with curiosity, others with skepticism, but little by little, his words began to touch hearts. He couldn't change anyone, but he could show that there was another way. And if even one bird, one rabbit, one squirrel, or any other creature in the forest found the strength to break free, then his journey would have been worth it. The past still existed, but it no longer defined him. Now, he soared higher than ever, not because he was stronger, but because he was truly free. How often do we chase after something, believing it will make us happy, only to find that it holds us captive instead? True freedom isn't found in the things of this world, it comes from within, from our ability to choose what truly brings us peace. If you ever feel trapped by something that seems impossible to let go of, remember this: the strength to change has always been inside you. Every new day is a chance to make a choice. And true freedom begins the moment we decide to set ourselves free. Have you ever faced something like this? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next one.